The Sooners grabbed another prediction for a blue chip defensive lineman, and can Brent Venables make that year two jump that other great coaches have made? We'll talk about it on tonight's episode of Locked On Sooners Live.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, the live edition. Shout out to every dayer out there listening in on the YouTube side or on the podcast side. And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. Josh, how's your Monday been, my friend?
It's good. It's good. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms out there. You, as one Kevin Durant would say, you the real MVP. So appreciate all the moms that are watching along or listening on Locked On Sooners, or just to everybody that has a mom out there. Happy Mother's Day belated to everybody. But it's good, man. It's been a Monday. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, it's been a great day. Had a little makeup soccer game with the daughter. And we got the 2-2 tie against the first place team in the league. So that was pretty big time. Team we hadn't beaten yet. So we're inching a little bit closer to catching them. So one more game this season on Saturday. So it's been a fun year. But let's talk Oklahoma Sooners, Josh, because as has been kind of trending now, we got the first prediction on Friday for 2024 four-star defensive lineman out of Durant, Oklahoma, Za'Davian Sims. Josh McCuistion of Sooner Scoop and On3 predicted that he would land with the Sooners. Now we've got our second prediction favoring the Sooners, as Parker Thune of OU Insider issued a Rivals Futurecast. It's still weird to say those things about Scoop and OU Insider, but we're going to get behind it. Parker issued a Rivals Futurecast predicting Day Za'Davian Sims landing with the Oklahoma Sooners. As we talked about on the Monday morning show, if you hadn't listened to that just yet, he's planning on committing this Saturday at C4 Sports in Durant's Pro Day, where they're going to have a host of athletes performing in front of recruiting analysts. It's basically like their own little version of the Combine, where they're bringing recruiting analysts and coaches and players from the region just to work out in front of people and just give people an idea of what they've got going. So Za'Davian Sims committing this Saturday. Looks like everything is pointing right now towards the Oklahoma Sooners, which is a change in direction from where it had been. It looked like Michigan State was kind of the big time player. Oregon had kind of started making some noise, making a few rumblings there as well. But Oklahoma looking to land one of the best in-state prospects of the 2024 class, Josh.
Yeah, and again, doesn't have the same noise around himself as maybe for some a David Stone or a Williams Nwaneri does, but Za'Davian Sims, somebody that, especially given the fact that you're talking about Durant, Oklahoma kid, feel like, okay, this is somebody in Za'Davian Sims, the tape, it's you can tell. I'd be curious to know what his 10-yard speed is and some of the acceleration type stuff and some of the shuttle, because it looks like he's I'm sure the 40's not the fastest 40 time in the world, but the acceleration from 3-point stance to backfield is pretty good when you watch the tape. And I don't know how it would compare maybe naturally, but just watching it on tape, it looks next level good, John. I can see why there's folks that have seen the tape and probably have seen Za'Davian Sims in person and evaluate Sims as a blue chip top 300, and in other cases, in other instances, top 200, top 150 type talent nationally. I mean, he looks the part. So this, though, again, isn't David Stone or Williams Nwaneri. To me, this is it's a high profile recruitment for Oklahoma, given the fact that, again, Durant, Oklahoma, and just what you see on tape, this is a really, really talented potential future interior defensive lineman for you.
Yeah, explosive is the word that comes to mind for me whenever I watch Za'Davian Sims, and relentless. Like, it's a guy that doesn't give up on the play. He chases it down. He works the backside pursuit. And then when he gets you, he doesn't let go. He gets a grab on you and you're done. So a big time move and a big time shift in the recruitment for Za'Davian Sims. And that's great. Like winning the in-state guys, that matters. Like how frustrating was it to watch Charlie Kolar go and catch touchdown passes for Iowa State against Oklahoma, and that might not have been a guy that was on Oklahoma's radar during the Lincoln Riley era, but it probably should have been. He was a good player. Like he was a solid player, and it's somebody that they could have probably used given his height and athleticism. You don't want to miss out too much on these in-state prospects because they're right in your backyard. These are guys that have watched Oklahoma for years. They know what Oklahoma's about. You got to sell them still, but it's a big time get if they're able to land this commitment. And if they're able to land the commitment, I believe they'll get a signing. It's not going to be one of those things where he later flips to another school. He's well aware of the defensive line prospects that Oklahoma is chasing. And if they're able to land this whole group, it's going to be a historic group of defensive linemen that they're going to be bringing into Norman in the 2024 recruiting cycle.
I'm not going to knock Oklahoma too much for not getting a Charlie Kolar because I'm looking back at that 17 class and it did have Grant Calcaterra and Jeremiah Hall in it. So Oklahoma on paper, and Jeremiah Hall was a really good player for a long time for OU. Calcaterra, I think had the potential to be that. It felt like he was trending in that direction. And then obviously circumstances changed a little bit, but generally speaking, the premise, right? Not to just totally debunk everything that you said. I agree with the premise. And especially for somebody.
I have been debunked. It's okay.
No, it's a politely debunked, if anything, but Charlie Kolar is somebody that I broadcast his high school games. So if there was anybody that was, hey, I'd love to see Charlie Kolar wind up in Crimson and Cream, it was yours truly. And yet, again, a little bit of love for Oklahoma in that class. It actually wound up with a couple of nice tight ends. But the general point stands. I think everybody, for the most part, that's a Sooner fan would agree. You would rather see Oklahoma take chances in state on the, and Za'Davian Sims a blue chip guy, but the chance that you're going to take it on an in-state guy and don't miss on in-state guys. When it's a blue chip in-state guy and you're not going to bat 1,000, everybody could be realistic about that, but can you bat close to 80, 90 on high-profile in-state guys? And Za'Davian Sims would certainly fit that profile.
As it stands right now, Oklahoma doesn't have an in-state in the top 10 of the 247 Sports composite. You got OSU that's got 3 of the top 10. Kansas has 1. And then there are 6 of the top 10 still uncommitted right now in the 2024 cycle. So it's possible. I think they're going to start kind of gaining traction, in the class. We'll start seeing quite a few commitments over the next couple of months. It looks like Za'Davian Sims is going to be the first one, maybe in the month of May. Have we had one in May? I can't remember if we've had one in May, but anyway, it's going to be the first kind of defensive line commitment. You've got a couple of defensive backs, you've got your quarterback, you got a wide receiver. So it's all trending good for the Oklahoma Sooners. This is going to be a fun time for sure for Oklahoma, for Za'Davian Sims. Be on the lookout for that commitment on Saturday. We'll continue to cover that here on Locked On Sooners. Coming up next, can Brent Venables make the year 2 jump that some of the greats in college football have made over the last 20 years? We'll talk about that after I tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. It tastes great. It's great for you. Low calorie, low carb, low sugar, high in protein. So many great flavors like the peanut butter brownie, which is my personal favorite, to the caramel brownie, the mint brownie, coconut brownie chunk, salted caramel, cookies and cream. So many fantastic flavors that are 100% covered in chocolate. They taste great. They're great for you. Great as a meal replacement, a snack, pre or post workout. You can't beat it. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off that next order over at built.com. You can also find them at Sam's and Walmart. Real quick question from 405 boy here. John, were you in Oklahoma at that time? I'm guessing we're thinking 2017. No, actually, I was living in Ethiopia back in 2017. That's a long story, maybe for another time, but been following the Sooners for quite some time, was not following them quite that closely between 2013 and 2018 or so, because of our time overseas, you're not pounding the recruiting pages very hard. You're just hoping that you can get Toby Rowland on the radio side, broadcasting through the internet, if it's good enough that night for you to be able to listen to the game, which we did. My wife and I did quite a few times, stay up past midnight or 3 a.m. in the morning watching or listening to Oklahoma Sooners football games. So that's going to be fun. We'll talk maybe as the offseason goes along, we'll get more into kind of our personal lives. But Josh, let's get into more of what this story, I mean, from Storman and Norman, was a really good exercise in just following the paths of some of the great coaches that we've seen in college football over the last 20 years and the year 1 to year 2 jumps that they made. And that's really what a lot of people are expecting from Brent Venables. And it begs the question, can he do that same thing that a Kirby Smart or a Nick Saban or Pete Carroll or Gary Patterson? I mean, a lot of highly, regarded college football head coaches had great year 2s following a okay year 1.
Yeah, the list here is extensive beyond just the typical names that we hear, and I'll just, by reference on the radio side, the 3 names you hear is Bob Stoops, because of course it's close to home, year 1 to year 2, and then it's Nick Saban and it's Kirby Smart, because Kirby Smart's who's won back-to-back national championships. And of course, Nick Saban has been the collegiate football standard bearer for the last, 15 years, this run. Is it longer than that now at Alabama? Decade and a half, right? That Nick Saban has been that guy and that Alabama has been that program. So it's been done by those guys. And yet, yeah, there's the other names that are kind of interesting that you mentioned. Actually, Nick Saban twice. You think about his stint at LSU to begin with, and then obviously at Alabama. But yeah, Pete Carroll and Gary Patterson, those are names. Kirby Smart, we talked about. Dave Aranda, the quick turnaround that he had at Baylor. I mean, it's been done other places from year 1 to year 2. Not a guarantee, obviously, for Oklahoma, but even beyond just looking at other head coaches, poor first season, or if you don't want to use the term poor, if you want to say average first seasons for a lot of these coaches we're talking about, to great second season, you can go that route. You can look at that, John. But I just look at, again, what I keep coming back to with Brent Venables is I trust the defense is going to improve, because that's what happened when he was at Clemson. It got so much markedly better year 1 to year 2 to year 3. So if that checks out in year 2, then the fact that, okay, you were a defensive coordinator then and now you're a head coach, I'm still going to be of the positive mindset that, okay, Brent Venables in this program is on the right trajectory, John. He's going to figure it out. And then the other in the back pocket is, yes, history elsewhere says that other coaches don't get off to always great starts, and they wind up having very, very long, successful runs.
The Athletic did a really interesting piece on Brent Venables, interviewed Brent Venables just the other day. If you haven't had a chance to check that story out, highly recommend it. But in there, they talk about 50 scholarship players turned over since Brent Venables got here. That's huge. Like more than 50% of your roster is gone in such a short time. But I think there's still reason for optimism and high expectations because of the players they brought in over the last 2 recruiting classes, this most recent transfer portal class, and even, a guy like Jonah Laula, who's here from the 2022 recruiting or transfer portal class. You've got some talented players. Now it just needs to kind of all come together. It all needs to coalesce for them to be a better unit defensively. And I think they are going to be. They're not going to be as bad as they were in 2022. It's just not going to happen. It would be utterly shocking, honestly, if it was as bad as it was last year. The talent is better defensively. I think they're going to have that because of that familiarity. They're going to be better defensively. And honestly, the schedule sets up a little bit better for them defensively, where they're not going to have to face a Will Howard in Kansas State. They're not going to have to face, either Baron Morton or Tyler Shough at Texas Tech. The Houston game, like Houston may not be a great program, but Dana Holgorsen is well known for putting up really good offenses, and they got Donovan Smith. Like that's going to be a really good offense that they'll have to face this year. They won't have to face the Baylor Bears rushing attack that gave them fits last year. So it all sets up for them to be really good defensively, at least statistically, just because of the level of competition. And I know we're kind of jumping the gun on our third segment here a little bit, but for that alone, but also with what they added defensively with Dasan McCullough, Rondo Bothroyd, Reggie Pearson, the recruiting class, a year of improvement from Jaren Kanak, depth, better depth at linebacker, maybe, just better dudes at cornerback. Like you got Woody Washington in year 2 with Brent Venables, and then you don't really know who your starting cornerback is on the other side, but you got to expect it's going to be better than what they had out of Jaden Davis. No disrespect to him, but you think the ceiling is going to be higher, even if it's a guy like a Makari Vickers or a Josiah Wagner. These guys have been getting rave reviews in camp, especially Wagner has been. And so you really like where you're heading in that direction. You just got to get these guys some game time experience at the college level for them to start taking off a little bit. And so I really do think it's all going to come together in a much better way defensively. And I think the offense is still going to be really, really good, even though they've got some question marks with a wide receiver, offensive line. I think it's just a team that is going to make a big jump. If they, whether they get to the college football playoff or the Big 12 title game, that remains to be seen. But I do think they're going to easily be 3-4 wins better than what they were a year ago, for sure.
I don't have the full list of, FanDuel, DraftKings, you name it, all the different sports books in front of me right now. But I think the general consensus is 9.5 wins or thereabout as the win total for Oklahoma, which, to 405 boys point right here. He says, or she says, or they say, I'm sticking with at least 10-2 this coming season. And basically what you're saying is on most of those, you're taking the over. And I think that a lot of people would probably take the over with Oklahoma, given the schedule, given the belief that you have in Brent Venables, and given the fact that you think this is pretty talented Oklahoma roster that by and large underachieved a season ago. I would say, John, if things go the direction that I hope or expect that they will, you could, to me, come back to the pack a little bit offensively and still significantly improve this season. If we see the type of jump defensively that I'm hopeful for that you'll see for Oklahoma, if you're what you were offensively last season, and I know there were gripes to be had, and I know there were frustrating moments to watch, but honestly, if you're that mixed with the defensive improvement that we're hopeful we'll see, you're talking about a Big 12 championship team in Oklahoma. And then even if you're a little bit below that pace, if offensive line takes a little bit of time to gel, John, or the wide receivers, it doesn't totally click overnight for Oklahoma, I still think you can get to that 10-win number, even with the offense taking a little bit of a step back, if the defense goes the direction that when we talk about, hey, Brent Venables, can year 1 to year 2 to beyond, can he follow that type of path to greatness? Well, if the defense goes the direction that we're hopeful that it will, then I think that you can have a very successful, more successful season, and maybe even some of the offensive growth that we're going to be waiting on, John, you can have that transpiring as you improve defensively and hopefully have a better overall season.
So the over under for wins, according to FanDuel, our friends over at FanDuel.com, 8.5. So I feel really good about the over on that. Like, I would be shocked if they are under 8.5 wins in 2023. I mean, just looking at the schedule, Arkansas State, W, SMU, W, Tulsa, W, Cincinnati on the road. It's going to be a tough road environment, but W, Iowa State, W. Heading into Texas, you're going to be 5-0. So then you just got to go, 3 or 4 and how many games are 4-4 over the final 8, or 4-3 over the final 7, I guess it is, to get to 9 wins. Like that seems to be really reasonable. Now, they started off strong last year, did great in non-conference, and then it was an up and down roller coaster during Big 12 play. But again, defensively, they're going to be better, and so this team is going to be better. Offensively, I think they're going to be as good, if not better. I think they'll just be as good, and that's okay. Like, you just got to be good, especially if they're better in key situations like we've talked about. And they've talked about how they have to be better in the red zone on third down on offense to come through in these crunch time situations, because that's what really held them back last year. If they're a little bit better, even just a little bit better in the red zone on third down, they win 2-3 more games. not having to settle for field goals or fourth down attempts, not having to punt the ball away, when you're under 3 minutes to go in the game. Like these are key situations, and you have to have your offense to be more consistent. I do think they will be a little bit more consistent, mostly because I believe Jalil Farouk, and I believe in his ability to win at every level of the defense. He can win in the short, he can win in the intermediate, and he can win downfield. As good as Marvin Mims was, he wasn't that dude you were throwing to in the short part of the field. When you needed a key 3rd and 8, they weren't going to Marvin Mims very often on that down and distance. It was down the field a lot of times to him. I mean, his gripe about not being asked to run a full route tree, I think was valid, because you didn't see him being asked to run a lot of slants or sluggos, or being asked to run, a lot of 10-yard hitches and things like that. But you got a guy in Jalil Farouk who's got a bigger body, great size, good athleticism, and is a good route runner. And you can ask him to run every route in the tree because he can do it, and he's physically able to. He's got the physicality to win on the inside. You ask him to go over the middle, he's going to be able to do that and pick up key first downs for you. I really do think that's going to be a game changer. And then the bringing back Austin Stogner, I think that adds an element to your passing game. Another element, Braden Willis was really, really good. Austin Stogner can be just as good, if not better, because of his ability in the passing game. So I think that does help you a little bit as well. Still got to figure out the other wide receiver position, but you get the ball to Gavin Sawchuk, that's going to create a lot more big plays for you too. Even if it's on check downs, short yard or a 3rd down, 3rd and long, he's going to be able to make some of those things happen for you because he's just so dynamic in the open field. One more thing, Josh, any other thoughts on this before we kind of move to our strength of schedule? We're going to have a little bit of an abbreviated Locked On Sooners Live this week. We'll be back with more Locked On Sooners Live next week. But Josh, any final thoughts on this idea, this topic?
Well, I do think that this season is paramount to showing us maybe what the future of Oklahoma football is going to look like. It doesn't have to be this great season for this to wind up being that, Brent Venables is the next, long-term solution as the head coach, great head coach in a long line of great history of head coaches at OU. Doesn't have to play out that way theoretically, but man, you'd feel a lot more comfortable if this is a double-figure type win season, if it's a return to a Big 12 championship game, if they go win a Big 12 championship, which Oklahoma's been that program in this conference. So I think it's doable. I'm optimistic that it's going to happen. And now they got to go do it. These additions that they brought in defensively via the transfer portal that they think they've developed in-house. I mean, that's going to be the big question is, have they developed and have they found the right transfer portal recipe? That's going to be the $1 million question for Oklahoma. I think the answer is going to be yes, but time obviously will tell on that front.
Yes. Sorry, that's a wrestling reference for those of you WWE aficionados out there. Last thing we're going to talk about, strength of schedule. College Football News ranked all of the strength of schedules in the FBS, and in the Big 12 specifically, the Oklahoma Sooners strength of schedule isn't that impressive. They come in at, I believe it was number 8 in the Big 12 in strength of schedule. Sorry, number 9. National rank was number 58. So how they kind of came about this was, if you had a team in their preseason 1 to 133 rankings that was ranked, say, 60, well, you get 60 points for that. If you play them at home, then I think it like cuts it in half or whatever. You play it on the road. I can't remember exactly the details, but basically based on their 1 to 131 rankings or 1 to 133 rankings, they came up with a strength of schedule that reflected that. And the lowest score in their strength of schedule had the highest, the strongest schedule ahead of the 2023 season. And the Oklahoma Sooners came in nationally number 58. So right about in the middle, kind of average, and then at 9th in the Big 12. And I really think this is a big part of why we're going to see a big jump in win totals for the Sooners in their final year in the Big 12.
I think it just reiterates a lot of the things that we've talked about and have touched on, that this schedule, it is what it is until it's proven otherwise, John. And a lot of people would say this about some of the fodder they've heard on this edition of Locked On Sooners Live. Why are you so optimistic? Why is there so much Kool-Aid, Crimson and Cream Kool-Aid here on Locked On Sooners? I got you. But when you look at the schedule for Oklahoma right now, until proven otherwise, it's not altogether that meaty. It's not altogether that challenging for Oklahoma. And college football news, they can have, whichever scoring system or metrics they want to do to put it together. I think they're in the right wheelhouse, without knowing the ins and outs of every single Big 12 team schedule right off the top of my head right here, right now. It's got to be, middle of the pack type schedule to the back half of the league in terms of difficulty, because there's nothing in the non-conference that's altogether challenging. You don't play Kansas State in this schedule. So Oklahoma got some breaks with the schedule. It kind of is what it is. And now you got to go take advantage of it.
Plus you get TCU at home. You get West Virginia at home. You do have to you get Iowa State at home. So this is a doable schedule for the Sooners. Like, there's nothing in this schedule that makes me think they can't be a 10-win team. I mean, the locales that they have to go to at BYU, at Provo, you got to go to, Kansas. Kansas is going to be they'll be an interesting team to follow. I'm not saying they're going to be a good team, but Jalen Daniels gives them a great opportunity to be really good. And that offense is going to be good, and they're going to continue to improve as a program. So that's an interesting matchup. The Jayhawks fans are going to be, geeked out to have Oklahoma in their building for what could be the last time, and who knows how long. I mean, there's no telling when that matchup, we won't call it a rivalry, that matchup will be renewed. So it's going to be intriguing. The Cincinnati game, I keep coming back to Nippert Stadium and just the environment that the fan base has created there during Cincinnati's run as, one of the best teams in the American Athletic Conference, making the college football playoff. Like, that place, they know how to do a blackout. They do it really, really well up there at Nippert. So just some really, really intriguing places to go. You got to go to Stillwater. While Oklahoma State, I'm expecting them to take a step back this season, you still got to go to Stillwater. And that's going to be another fan base that's going to be ready to greet the Oklahoma Sooners with all of the vitriol that Bedlam should bring. And because, again, who knows when Oklahoma and Oklahoma State will meet up again after this. Like, this could be the last time for some time. There's no telling when it's all going to come together for Bedlam to happen again, or even if it'll happen again. Mike Gundy wasn't all that ecstatic about having it. President Casey Shrum wasn't all like that eager to get into negotiations for when it could happen again. So it's one of those games that the environment is going to be a challenge. Whether the team is all that challenging, we'll see, but the environment definitely is going to be a challenge. They still got some talent. Even though we're down on them, they still got Colin Oliver. They still got Brennan Presley, two really, really, really good players. Like, both players are going to get drafted, whether it's in 2020, I think 2024 eligibility at this point, but both dudes will get drafted. Really good football players. So there'll be some challenges, but it's not like, again, that they're having to go to Lubbock to face an improved Texas Tech team or Manhattan to play a really good Kansas State team. It's all working in their favor this year.
Or going to Waco to face Dave Aranda on his get right season, because maybe he's in that cycle where it's like one off year, one on year. I mean, we'll see with the Baylor Bears. But I just look at the what we think will be the challenging road test in this schedule, and or hypothetically could be Cincinnati. There's no Ritter at quarterback right now. We'll see what happens there. Oklahoma State, I mean, we've seen, I guess, some flashes at times from Bowman at quarterback. It's, there's been some good play in the past from Bowman, but it's not even as many up and down comments and, mediocre remarks as some felt about Spencer Sanders. Spencer Sanders is somebody that pretty doggone good college quarterback, and I would definitely rather have, if I'm an Oklahoma State fan, than Alan Bowman going into this season. So I just picked the two key road dates probably for most, and there's a lot of unknown about each of those two teams. I mean, BYU is just these road tests that in years past, maybe there's something to really, really be concerned about, and maybe it plays out that way before it's all said and done, but you don't see that road test where it's, basically going to Manhattan with Will Howard, who's a proven Big 12 quarterback.
Right. You're going to face, a Cincinnati team with Emory Jones, who just pretty good. He's solid. He's been a solid college football quarterback, but he hasn't really taken that step into greatness. You go to BYU, you play at Provo against Keaton Slovis, who's got some experience, but again, a guy that transferred from USC to Pitt and now from Pitt to BYU, not really finding a home for him. So the locale, and then you talked about Alan Bowman. His biggest issue has been health. Will he even be healthy enough for Bedlam by the time it gets there in that first week in November? So again, the more challenging, road trips that you have, the quarterback situations aren't all that stable, or at least aren't quarterbacks that you go into the season fearing. Now, a lot could change. Again, I wasn't afraid of Adrian Martinez this time last year, and he had a great start to the season for the Wildcats, a completely different quarterback than what we'd seen in Nebraska. So yeah, just there's no telling what the season will unfold, but I think we're both still feeling pretty confident that Oklahoma is going to take a few win better step in the right direction. And one of those reasons is strength of schedule. Josh, any final thoughts on this before we get out of here on a abbreviated version of Locked On Sooners Live?
Yeah, my apologies. I have a magazine story that is on deadline that must get done. There are no ifs, ands, and buts about that. And you know what? Pen has not met paper yet, or fingers to keyboard just yet on said magazine story. So that's what's going on. I apologize for that to everyone. No, just in closing on the football side of things with Brent Venables and Oklahoma, it's a massive season. I'm optimistic that this is going to work out. I like the additions that they brought in via the transfer portal. I'm very excited about McCullough. I'm excited about Reggie Pearson, and just how all of this is going to coalesce with some young talent that Oklahoma has put together. And I have some concerns about just different things offensively, offensive line, wide receiver, you name it. But I'm optimistic that that's, if it's not straight away, the way the schedule, speaking of it, unfolds, you can maybe get some things tightened up before you see Texas down at the Cotton Bowl. So it's a massive year. Obviously, it feels that way with the SEC looming and coming off the bat of last season. It just feels like this year is ramped up every year for Oklahoma football, but this year feels like it's even maybe, a couple of degrees higher.
Yeah, and we're going to find out how well they respond to pressure in this season, because the expectations are still high. Nobody's given them really a pass on, if they don't win 8, 9, 10 games and contend for the Big 12 titles. So can't wait to watch and find out how this season goes on. We're still, just under 4 months away from the start of the regular season, but we will be with you here on Locked On Sooners Monday through Friday throughout to continue to cover recruiting. Last week, we got a little bit caught up. I had some health stuff going on with the family that was just not making it possible to record. We had some tornadoes going on in the Oklahoma City, Norman area that was, preventing some things for Josh as well. So we're going to be here as often as we possibly can. We're still aiming for 5 days a week throughout the off season to cover recruiting and softball, and we'll get into baseball. Kendall, I see you over there. Wanting us to talk baseball. We talked about Built Bars. You just were 15 minutes late for the Built Bar read. That's on you, man. Give us a hard time about it. But yeah, a shorter stream tonight, but we hope you all had a great weekend celebrating your moms, and then all the people that have been like moms in your life. I can think of one person off the top of my head. I mean, my mom, absolutely special, love her to death. She's just been one of my biggest supporters, my nursing career, and then this other career that I've kind of taken into in sports. But then also a friend of mine, his mom, BB, just always welcomed me into the house, always had a plate of Mexican food to give me every time I came in the house. So it was always good time going to the Arrebelos' house. So again, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, all the will-be moms, all the moms who want to be moms but haven't been able to be moms too. Those people also hold a special place in our heart. It took us quite a while to become parents in our own right, and so just want to also throw a special shout out to you as well. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. We thank you so much for tuning into the show and subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Shout out to the Everydayers, every member of that Everyday Club, for being locked in with Locked On Sooners. Until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer Sooner.